there is a story told of the Buddha in his early years of seeking. Before his awakening, he practiced with a group of ascetics in the forest. He reduced his food to a single grain of rice each day. His body became skeletal. His ribs showed through his skin like the beams of an old house. He pushed himself to the edge of survival, believing that freedom lay in the complete denial of the body's needs. One day, near collapse, he heard a boat passing on the nearby river. On the boat, a music teacher was instructing a student about the strings of a lute. If you tune the string too tight, the teacher said, it will snap. If you leave it too loose, it will not play. The sound comes from the middle tension, neither forced nor slack. The Buddha understood something in that moment. He had spent years in luxury as a prince, surrounded by pleasure and distraction. Then he had swung entirely the other way, into severe deprivation. Neither extreme had brought him closer to understanding. Neither had freed him from suffering. He accepted a bowl of rice milk from a village girl. His companions, seeing this, believed he had given up. They left him. But he had not given up. He had found a different way. This is where the middle way begins. Not as a compromise. Not as a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but as a living attention to what is actually needed in each moment. You might think of it like walking a path through the forest. On one side, the ground slopes down into thick mud, heavy and clinging. On the other side, the ground rises into sharp stones and thorns. The middle way is not about measuring the exact center between these two. It is about feeling the ground beneath your feet, noticing when you begin to slip toward one side or the other, adjusting gently without panic. Most of us know both sides of this path well. We know what it is to reach for comfort, to soothe ourselves with food or distraction, or the numbing scroll of a screen. We know the temporary relief, and we know the heaviness that follows. The way pleasure, when grasped at, turns stale, and many of us also know the other slope. The voice that says we should be stronger, that we should need less, that rest is weakness, the tightening, the pushing through. The belief that if we just control ourselves enough, deny ourselves enough, we will finally be good enough. Neither of these is freedom. The Buddha did not teach that pleasure is evil. He taught that clinging to pleasure leads to suffering, and he did not teach that we must punish the body or deprive ourselves to be worthy. He taught that denying our actual needs also leads to suffering. The middle way asks us to see clearly, to notice the difference between a need and a craving, to feel the difference between rest and escape. This is not easy to see. The mind is quick. It justifies. It tells stories. It says, I deserve this, or I must not allow myself this. Both are forms of blindness, but the body knows. If you bring your attention down, away from the spinning thoughts, and into the sensations of breathing, the body will tell you what is true, not in words, in the quality of the breath, in the tension or ease in the shoulders, in the way the belly tightens or softens. Right now, you might notice your own breath, not changing it, just feeling it. The coolness as air enters, the warmth as it leaves, the small pause between, and you might notice, is there tightness anywhere? Are you holding yourself in some way? Or is there a kind of collapse, a sinking away from presence? Neither is wrong, but both are information. The middle way is not a fixed position. It is a constant attention, a tuning. Like the lute string, it requires adjustment. What was right yesterday may not be right today. What serves you in the morning may not serve you at night. This is why the Buddha spoke of the path as something to be walked, not a destination to arrive at once and be done with. The middle way is not a place. It is a quality of attention, a willingness to feel what is true, even when it is uncomfortable, even when it does not fit the story we tell ourselves about who we should be. The mud and the stones are still there. The pull toward comfort, the pull toward control, they do not disappear. But with practice, you begin to notice them sooner. You feel the first tug, the first tightening. And in that noticing, there is space. Space to choose, space to return to the path. This is where we begin. There is a particular kind of restlessness that lives in the body when we are caught between two opposite movements. We push hard towards something we want, and at the same time we are bracing against something we fear. The muscles tense. The breath becomes shallow. We are never quite still because we are always pulling in two directions at once. This is not a small problem. It shapes how we live almost every day. The Buddha spoke about this directly, not as a moral failure, but as something he had observed in himself. He had lived in palaces, surrounded by every comfort his family could arrange: soft beds, fine food, music and gardens, and the company of people whose only task was to please him. And then he had left all of that and spent years practicing extreme asceticism. He fasted. He sat in the sun. He denied his body almost everything it asked for. What he noticed, after living at both extremes, was that neither brought peace. The luxury did not satisfy him. The denial did not free him. In both cases, he was still reaching, still grasping, still trying to solve something that cannot be solved by force. What he found instead was something quieter, a way of living that was neither indulgent nor punishing, a middle way, not as a compromise between two bad choices, but as a completely different approach to being alive. The difficulty is that this middle way is harder to feel than the extremes. When we are indulging, we have the sensation of getting what we want. When we are denying ourselves, we have the sensation of doing something difficult and meaningful. But the middle way offers neither of these feelings. It is less dramatic. It does not give us the rush of satisfaction or the sense of virtue, so we tend to abandon it and swing back toward one edge or the other. Think of a string pulled tight across a wooden frame. If you pull it too hard, if you tighten it with all your strength, the string will snap. The tension becomes too much. But if the string is loose, if there is no tension at all, it makes no sound. It cannot resonate. There is no music. The string needs a particular kind of tension to do what it is meant to do. Not maximum tension, not no tension. Something in between, something precise and alive. Our lives are like this. We are always adjusting the tension. Tightening when we are afraid we will lose something we want. Loosening when we are exhausted by the effort. Tightening again when we feel ourselves slipping. Never finding the place where we can simply rest and be present to what is actually happening. The swing between indulgence and denial is often so fast that we do not even notice it. We might indulge in food and then immediately feel guilty and restrict ourselves. We might push ourselves hard at work and then collapse into numbing distraction. We might seek pleasure and then punish ourselves for it. These movements happen so quickly that they feel like a single experience, not two opposite reactions. But if you slow down and watch, you can see the pattern, the reaching, the pulling back, the reaching again. What makes this so exhausting is not the indulgence or the denial themselves. It is the constant movement between them. It is the fact that we are never at rest. We are always trying to get away from discomfort or toward comfort, and both of these movements require effort. Both keep us tense. The middle way does not mean doing nothing. It does not mean becoming passive or indifferent. It means finding a way to be with what is actually present without the constant push and pull. It means eating when you are hungry, in a way that is nourishing and aware. It means resting when you are tired. It means working when there is work to do, without the frantic quality of someone who is afraid. It means noticing desire without immediately acting on it or immediately suppressing it. This is why the Buddha's teaching is not about being good or bad. It is about being awake. It is about noticing where the tension is, where you are pulling too hard, where you are bracing yourself against what you fear. Because as long as you are caught in that movement, you cannot see clearly. You cannot feel what is actually true for you in this moment. There is a particular moment that comes up again and again in a day, a moment when you notice yourself either forcing something or avoiding something. It might be small. You might be pushing yourself to finish a task, even though you are tired. Or you might be avoiding a conversation you know you need to have. You might be reaching for food, not because you are hungry, but because you are uncomfortable. You might be holding yourself back from something you actually want to do, because you are afraid of what might happen. If you simply notice that moment without trying to fix it or judge it, something shifts. Not dramatically, not all at once. But there is a small opening. A moment where you are not caught in the movement anymore. You are just aware of it. You name it quietly to yourself. I am forcing. I am avoiding. And in that naming, there is a kind of freedom. Not the freedom of getting what you want. Not the freedom of successfully denying yourself. But the freedom of seeing clearly, of being present to your own life as it actually is. There is a moment, often quiet and easy to miss, when you notice yourself reaching for something. Not the thing itself, but the reaching. The small contraction in your chest, the way your attention narrows, the pull towards something you believe will make you feel better. This is craving. And it is not about the object at all. We live most of our lives convinced that wanting is about the thing we want. We want food because we are hungry. We want rest because we are tired. We want connection because we are lonely. This seems obvious. The wanting and the object seem bound together, inseparable. But if you sit quietly for long enough, you begin to notice something else. The craving itself has a texture, a location, a quality of movement in the body and mind that exists separate from whatever we believe we need. Think of a person dying of thirst in a desert. The sun is high, the mouth is dry, and then, far ahead, the shimmer of water appears. The mind does not hesitate. It moves toward the image it reaches. It believes. But the water is not there. It never was. What was real was the thirst. What was real was the mind's movement toward the mirage. The thirst itself, the dryness, the contraction, that was the actual experience. The mirage was only the story the mind told about how to end it. This is how craving works in our lives. We confuse the sensation of wanting with the story of what we lack. We feel the pull, and immediately we name it, I need food. I need approval. I need to be different than I am. I need this person to understand me. And because we have named it, because we have attached it to an object, we believe the solution lies in getting the object. We believe the thirst will end when we drink the mirage. But the mirage is not water, and the object of our craving is not the craving itself. The early teachings point to this with a simple observation. Craving is not the object itself, but the mind's movement toward it. The Buddha did not teach that wanting things is wrong. He taught that we suffer because we mistake the movement, the reaching, the grasping, the sense of lack, for something that can be solved by acquiring or achieving or becoming. We spend our lives trying to drink from images, and the thirst never ends because we are not addressing the thirst. We are addressing the story about the thirst. This is where the middle way enters. Not as a moral teaching about moderation, not as a rule about how much you should have or do or want, but as a direct seeing of what is actually happening when you crave something. The middle way is the path between indulgence and denial. Indulgence says follow every craving, get what you want. This will make you happy. Denial says reject all wanting, suppress the craving, transcend desire. Both miss the point. Both treat the craving as if it is the problem to be solved, rather than a sensation to be understood. When you indulge every craving, you do not end the craving. You strengthen it. You teach the mind that this is how we solve the problem of discomfort. We reach outward, we grasp, we consume. The thirst is never quenched, because you are still drinking from the mirage. You are still mistaking the image for the real thing. When you deny the craving, you do not end it either. You push it away. You create tension around it. You make it forbidden, which makes it louder. The mind becomes obsessed with what it cannot have. The reaching continues, but now it is hidden. Now it is shame-wrapped. The mirage is still there. You are just refusing to look at it while it burns in your peripheral vision. The middle way is neither of these. It is to turn toward the craving itself, to feel it, to notice where it lives in your body before you move toward the object or away from it. This is not a theory. This is something you can do right now, in this very moment, if a craving is present. Or you can remember the last time one arose. The hunger, the restlessness, the urge to check your phone, the wish to be somewhere other than here. When you notice it, pause. Do not move toward it. Do not move away from it. Just feel where it is. Craving has a location. It is not abstract. It lives in your body. You might feel it as a tightness in your chest, a pulling sensation in your belly, a restlessness in your limbs, a dryness in your throat, a heaviness behind your eyes. The sensation is there, beneath the story, beneath the name you have given it, beneath the object you believe will solve it. Stay with that sensation for a moment. Not to change it, not to get rid of it, just to know it as it is, to feel the raw pull without the narrative wrapped around it. This is the practice. This is where understanding begins. When you touch the sensation directly, something shifts. The craving does not disappear, but the urgency loosens. The sense of lack becomes just sensation. The mirage becomes just light and heat, and the mind's habit of reaching toward it. And in that small space of clarity, you are no longer driven. You are aware. You are free to respond rather than react. This is the middle way. Not indulgence, not denial, but clear seeing of what is actually here. There is a quiet place between two extremes where most of us never quite rest. We know the feeling of pushing too hard, eating too much, wanting too much, moving too fast through our days. We know the exhaustion of that. But there is another exhaustion we speak of less often. It lives in the opposite direction. It lives in the effort of refusing. A monk sits in the monastery. His bowl of rice is placed before him. He does not eat. He has decided that indulgence is the root of suffering, so he will deny himself. He will be disciplined. He will be pure, but something curious happens. Even as he sits there, not eating, his mind is full of the rice. He is thinking about the rice. He is thinking about not eating the rice. He is thinking about why he should not eat the rice. The rice has become the center of his attention in a different way. He has not freed himself from it. He has only changed his relationship to it from grasping to pushing away, and both take effort. Both keep him bound. This is the teaching that comes down through the lineages. The monk who refuses food is still thinking about food. The person who denies themselves pleasure is still enslaved by pleasure. They have simply chosen the other side of the chain. When we look at our own lives, we can see this pattern everywhere. There is the person who eats too much and feels trapped by appetite. But there is also the person who eats too little, who counts calories, who says no to every indulgence, and who carries a constant low-level tension in their body. Both are caught. Both are thinking about food. The content of the thought has changed, but the grip has not loosened. The Buddha taught a middle way, not as a compromise, not as a gray, tepid halfway point, but as a way of being that does not require constant effort in either direction. When you are truly in the middle, you are not leaning, you are not holding anything up, you are simply standing. Think of a door. If you push it open with force, you are using energy. Your muscles are engaged. Your attention is fixed on the door. Now imagine you push it closed with equal force. Your muscles are just as engaged. Your attention is just as fixed on the door. The effort is the same. The direction has changed, but the tension remains. Holding the door shut takes as much effort as pushing it open. Most of us have learned this in our bodies, but we have not learned it about our minds, about our desires, about our refusals. Aversion is the word for this pushing away. It is one of the three poisons in Buddhism, alongside greed and delusion. We speak of greed often, the grasping, the wanting, but aversion is its twin. It is equally binding. When you are in aversion, you are still caught. You are still using energy. You are still not free. The middle way is not about finding the right amount of something. It is about releasing the effort of control itself. It is about noticing when you are pushing and letting your hand relax. This is harder than it sounds, because we have been taught that discipline is virtue. We have been taught that saying no proves our strength. We have been taught that denial is noble. So when we notice ourselves refusing something, refusing rest, refusing pleasure, refusing ease, we often feel righteous about it. We feel like we are doing something good. The tension in our bodies becomes invisible to us because we have given it a moral name. But the Buddha did not teach that suffering comes from having desires. He taught that suffering comes from the way we relate to desires, from the clinging, from the pushing away, from the belief that we must control everything about ourselves in order to be acceptable. When you sit in meditation and a thought arises that you do not want, what happens? If you are new to practice, you might try to push it away. You might try to force your attention elsewhere. You might grip harder, but experienced practitioners know something different. They know that the thought will pass on its own if you simply do not feed it. If you do not push against it, it loses its power. The effort of resistance is what keeps it alive. This is true of our habits, our cravings, our aversions. The monk who refuses food is still feeding his relationship to food by his constant resistance. The person who denies themselves rest is still bound to the idea of rest by their constant refusal. The effort of the refusal is the chain. So what does the middle way actually look like in practice? It begins with noticing, with becoming aware of where you are holding, where you are pushing, where you have made yourself tight in the name of discipline or purity or control. There is something you habitually refuse. It might be rest. It might be pleasure. It might be asking for help. It might be a food you have decided is bad. It might be sitting still without doing something productive. Whatever it is, you know the feeling of saying no to it. You know the slight tension that comes with that no. The practice is simple, though not easy. Sit with that refusal for a moment, not to change it, not to suddenly say yes instead, but simply to feel the effort involved in the no, to notice the muscles that are engaged, the way your breath might be slightly held, the way your attention is still bound to the very thing you are refusing. Just observe this. Let it be there. You do not need to do anything about it yet. Just feel the hidden effort in your resistance. Feel how much energy it takes to hold that door shut. When the Buddha first taught the middle way, he was not offering a formula. He was describing something he had noticed while walking. The path between extremes is not a fixed line drawn on a map. It is alive. It moves. It shifts with each step you take, with the ground beneath you, with the weight you are carrying that day. Many of us come to this teaching looking for the answer. We want to know exactly how much is enough. How much work, how much rest, how much food, how much solitude, how much connection. We want a number, a rule, a clear boundary we can trust. But the middle way does not work that way. It cannot be calculated in advance. It can only be felt as you move through it. Think of a tightrope walker. Not the kind you see in a circus, frozen in perfect balance on a wire. The real kind, the one who is constantly adjusting. Micro movements in the ankles, small shifts in the hips. The pole held not stiffly but alive in the hands. The walker is never still, never perfectly balanced. The balance itself is the movement. Stop moving and you fall. The middle way is like this. It is not a position you reach and hold. It is a continuous adjustment. Most of us have learned to live in extremes. We know indulgence. We know denial. These feel safer than the middle because they are simpler. Indulgence says yes to everything. The body wants it, so take it. The mind wants distraction, so pursue it. There is a kind of relief in this. No decision required, just flow. But this path leads somewhere we do not want to go. It leads to exhaustion, to numbness, to the slow erosion of what matters. Denial feels different, but works the same way. It says no to everything that feels good, everything that pulls us. Deny the body, deny comfort, deny rest, transcend. This also feels like clarity at first. There is a sharpness to it, a sense of control. But denial is just indulgence wearing different clothes. Both are reactions. Both are ways of not being present to what is actually here. The middle way is neither of these. It is not a compromise between them. A compromise would still be calculated, still be a position. The middle way is something else entirely. It is the willingness to stay awake to what is needed right now, not what you want, not what you think you should do, what is actually needed. This requires a different kind of attention than most of us have been trained to give. It requires you to notice, moment by moment, what is true. When you eat, can you feel the difference between hunger and habit? When you rest, can you sense the difference between genuine fatigue and avoidance? When you work, can you tell the difference between effort and strain? These are not abstract questions. They live in your body. They live in the quality of your breath. The Buddha was clear about this. He did not say the path is found by thinking about it. He said it is found by walking it with attention. Walking, not standing still and contemplating, not planning the route in advance. Walking and noticing what happens as you walk. This is why the middle way is so difficult for the modern mind. We are trained to plan, to strategize, to decide in advance. We want to know the rule so we can follow it correctly. But the middle way has no rule. It has only attention. And attention is not something you can prepare for. You can only practice it. Here is what becomes possible when you begin to practice this. Choose one ordinary activity. Something you do every day. Eating a meal, taking a walk, working on something that matters to you, sleeping, washing dishes. It does not matter which one. What matters is that you choose something small enough to actually pay attention to. For the next week, do this activity without excess and without withholding. This is not a restriction, it is an invitation to notice. When you eat, eat until you are satisfied, not stuffed, not deprived, satisfied. Notice what that feels like. Notice how it changes from day to day. Some days your body needs more, some days less. There is no right answer. There is only attention. When you walk, walk at the pace that feels alive, not rushed, not dragging, alive. Notice how this changes. When you are rested, you might move faster. When you are tired, slower. When you are anxious, your pace quickens. When you are calm, it settles. You are not trying to fix any of this. You are just noticing. This is the tightrope walker again. Constant small adjustments. Never frozen, never flailing. Just present to what the wire is asking of you in this moment. This moment is different from the last. Your body knows this. Your breath knows this. The middle way is simply the willingness to let your actions follow what is actually true, rather than what you decided in advance should be true. As you practice this with one simple activity, something shifts. You begin to trust your own sensing. You begin to notice that balance is not something you achieve and then maintain. It is something you do, over and over, with gentleness, with patience, with the quiet confidence that comes from walking the path itself. There is a particular kind of restlessness that lives in the body after we have eaten. Not hunger, not fullness either. Something in between. A lingering sensation that asks, was that enough? Should there be more? Did I actually taste it? We live often in this uncertain middle ground. Not quite satisfied, not quite empty. We reach for another bite, another sip, another moment of rest. Not because we need it, but because we have not yet felt the quiet that arrives when a true need has been met. The quiet is what we are actually looking for, but we rarely pause long enough to notice it when it comes. The Buddha taught a middle way, not the denial of the ascetics who starved themselves into clarity, and not the indulgence of those who believed that satisfaction lived in endless consumption. Something quieter, something that required attention. There is a bowl. It fills drop by drop. You do not watch it constantly. You do not measure each drop against some imagined fullness. You simply allow the water to accumulate, and at some point, without fanfare, without announcement, the bowl is full, not overfull, not half full, full. The surface becomes still. The water reflects light, and in that stillness, you know, this is what satisfaction actually is. Not in the object, not in the food, the drink, the rest, the comfort. The satisfaction lives in the quiet that follows true nourishment. In the moment when the need has been genuinely met, and the body releases its asking. We have forgotten how to feel this. We have learned instead to chase the sensation of consumption itself, the taste, the texture, the stimulation. These are real and they matter, but they are not the same as nourishment, and they are not the same as satisfaction. A person might eat an entire meal without tasting it. The food enters the body, the mouth moves, but the attention is elsewhere, and when the plate is empty, the body still asks, did I eat? The need was not truly met because the nourishment was not truly received. So we eat again. We search for the satisfaction we did not feel the first time, or consider rest. A person lies down, exhausted. The body is still, but the mind is restless, planning, worrying, reaching toward tomorrow. The rest does not land. The nervous system does not release. So they rise still tired, still searching for the rest they did not receive. The middle way is not about quantity. It is not about eating less or resting less. It is about whether the receiving actually happens, whether the nourishment is truly allowed to settle into the body, whether we pause long enough to notice when the need has been met. This requires something very simple. It requires stopping, not stopping forever, not becoming rigid or controlled, but stopping for a moment after the need has been tended, after you have eaten, after you have drunk, after you have rested, stopping and noticing what is present now. There is a texture to satisfaction that is quite distinct from hunger or craving. It is quieter. It does not demand anything. It does not push forward. It simply is. Like the still surface of a bowl that is full. Like the moment when the water stops moving and reflects what is around it. When you eat, you might notice the moment when the body's actual hunger is met. Not the hunger of the mouth or the habit of eating, but the deeper signal from the body itself. That signal is subtle. It arrives quietly. It does not shout. It does not compete with the pleasure of taste or the momentum of the meal. But it is there, a kind of settling, a kind of yes. If you pause and feel for it, you begin to recognize it. The body becomes still. The urgency releases. There is a sense of completion, not of deprivation, not of denial, of completion. The same is true of drinking. The throat has a particular way of signaling that it has received what it needed. Not the pleasure of flavor alone, but the actual quenching, a kind of internal release, a softening and rest. The nervous system has a very particular quality when it has truly settled. It is not the heaviness of exhaustion. It is not the numbness of dissociation. It is a kind of easeful stillness. The body knows the difference, but only if you are quiet enough to feel it. The middle way asks us to trust this knowing, to notice it, to allow it to be enough. This is not a practice of restraint. It is a practice of attention, of receiving fully what is offered, of allowing the nourishment to actually land before moving on to the next thing. When you next eat, you might try this. Not as a rule, not as something you must do perfectly, but as a gentle experiment. After you have eaten, pause, not for long, just long enough to notice. Is there a quality of settling in the body? A sense that something has been received? Can you feel the difference between the pleasure of eating and the quiet that follows true nourishment? You might notice at first that you do not feel it, that the restlessness continues. That is not a failure. It simply means the receiving did not fully happen. The attention was elsewhere. That is information. That is useful. Over time, as you pause more often, the subtle signal becomes easier to recognize. The body learns to signal it more clearly. The mind learns to listen. And in that listening, something shifts. The endless reaching begins to settle. The bowl fills drop by drop, and you are there to notice when it is full. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from living at the edges. Not the tiredness of genuine rest, but the fatigue of holding yourself at a distance from your own life. You know this already, perhaps. The feeling of swinging too far in one direction, then correcting too far in the other. Eating nothing, then eating everything. Working without pause, then collapsing into numbness. Speaking your mind harshly, then swallowing your words for weeks. The middle way is not a place you arrive at and stay. This is important to understand from the beginning. It is not a fixed point on a map that you can reach and then rest. The middle way is a movement. It is the constant, gentle returning to balance when you notice you have drifted. A river finds its course not by force, but by meeting each stone as it comes. The river does not plan its path. It does not grip the earth and demand a straight line. It moves, encounters an obstacle, shifts, and continues. Sometimes it pools and eddies. Sometimes it rushes. The river is always in relation to what it meets, and in that meeting, it finds its way. This is how the body and mind actually work, though we rarely notice it. We are taught to think of balance as a state to achieve and then maintain. Get it right, and you can relax. But this misses something fundamental about how a human life actually moves. You will swing to an extreme. You will do this again and again. Not because you are failing at practice. Not because you have not understood the teaching well enough, but because you are alive, and aliveness includes the constant small corrections that keep you upright as you walk. There is an old teaching that says fall down 7 times, stand up 8. It does not say fall down once and never again. It does not promise that understanding will make you immune to losing your way. It simply acknowledges what is true: you will fall. The practice is in the standing up. The practice is in the return. This changes everything about how you relate to your own imbalance. When you notice you have swung too far toward denial, toward pushing away what you need, toward discipline that has become punishment, toward a kind of spiritual bypassing that feels noble but leaves you hollow, there is no shame in that noticing. The noticing itself is the practice beginning. You have not failed. You have simply become aware of where you are. And when you swing the other way, toward indulgence that leaves you scattered, toward numbing what you could be feeling, toward taking more than you need, because you are trying to fill something that cannot be filled that way, this too is not failure. This is the river meeting a stone. This is life showing you something about yourself. The middle way does not mean moderation in the sense of always doing a little bit of everything. It means responding to what is actually needed in this moment, and then in the next moment, and then in the next. Sometimes what is needed is complete rest. Sometimes what is needed is effort. Sometimes what is needed is to say no firmly. Sometimes what is needed is to say yes, to open, to receive. The key is that you are not deciding this from a fixed philosophy. You are sensing it. You are allowing your body and your breath and the actual circumstances of your life to tell you what is balanced right now. When you notice you have swung to an extreme, and you will notice, because the body always knows, there is a simple return available to you. It does not require a big correction. It does not require self-judgment or a plan to do better. You simply pause. You come back to your breath. You feel your body sitting or standing or lying down. You let yourself be here in this moment, without the momentum of the swing still carrying you. This is not a reset. It is not wiping the slate clean and starting over with willpower. It is more like a river pausing in a pool before continuing downstream. You are not fighting the current. You are resting in it, and in that rest, the natural direction reveals itself. The breath is always available for this. It does not judge you for having swung too far. It does not require you to be different than you are. It is simply here, moving in and out, showing you that you are alive right now, in this breath, not in the swing you just completed, or the one you fear is coming. When you return to the breath, after noticing an extreme, something shifts, not dramatically, not in a way you need to feel as success, but the grip loosens, the urgency quiets, and from that quiet, your next movement can come from a different place. Not from the momentum of the swing, not from the fear of falling, but from what is actually needed. This is the practice, not perfection, not staying in the middle, but the gentle, repeated return to what is true right now. The falling and the standing, the meeting of each stone, the river finding its way. The middle way is not a position you arrive at once and hold forever. It moves. Some mornings you wake and the balance feels easy. The body is rested. The mind is clear. You meet the day without grasping or pushing away. Other mornings the balance is harder to find. You reach for comfort or brace against discomfort before you even notice what you're doing. This is not failure. This is the nature of being alive in a body that changes, in a mind that moves. What we practice is not perfection. What we practice is noticing. When you catch yourself leaning too far toward pleasure, you don't scold yourself. You just see it. When you catch yourself tightening against pain, you don't add shame to the tightness. You just feel it. And in that seeing, in that feeling, there is already a softening, already a return. The middle way asks you to be honest about what is here, not what should be here. Not what you wish were here, just what is. And that honesty is tender. It does not demand that you be further along than you are. It does not require that you have it all figured out. It simply invites you to meet this moment as it is, with whatever capacity you have right now. Some days that capacity is wide. You can hold difficulty without collapsing. You can enjoy ease without clinging. Other days that capacity is narrow. The smallest frustration feels enormous. The gentlest pleasure slips through your fingers. Both are workable. Both are part of the path. The middle way does not ask you to transcend your humanness. It asks you to live inside it with more awareness, more kindness, more space. Impermanence is woven into everything. The craving that felt so urgent an hour ago has already shifted. The aversion that gripped you this morning has loosened. Even the balance itself does not stay fixed. You find it, and then it moves, and you find it again. This is not a problem to solve. This is the rhythm of practice. Returning, again and again. Not because you failed to stay, but because staying was never the point. What remains is the willingness to return, to notice when you have drifted toward excess or deprivation, and to gently come back to center. Not with force, not with judgment, just with the quiet recognition that here, in the middle, there is more room to breathe, more room to see clearly, more room to live without being pulled in directions that do not serve your deepest well-being. This returning is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It happens in small moments, in the breath you take before reacting, in the pause before reaching for distraction, in the softness you bring to a difficult feeling instead of hardening against it. These are not grand gestures. They are quiet acts of care, and over time, they shape the way you move through the world. The middle way does not promise that life will become easy. It does not promise that you will stop wanting or stop avoiding. It promises something quieter. It promises that you can learn to hold your experience with less violence, that you can meet pleasure without desperation and pain without collapse, that you can live with more balance, more steadiness, more peace. And when you lose that balance, as you will, you can find it again. Not because you are disciplined or strong, but because you are willing to see, willing to feel, willing to return. This willingness is enough. It has always been enough. If you would like to continue sitting with these reflections, there are other teachings here that explore the same ground from different angles, but there is no urgency. What matters is not how much you consume, but how deeply you allow what resonates to settle. You can return to this anytime. The middle way will still be here, quiet and patient, waiting for you to walk it again. For now, let yourself rest in whatever has touched you. Let it be simple. Let it be enough.